Time plays a major role in our lives. Time should be utilized properly. In the Bhagavatam second canto, it is explained, with the rising and setting of the sun, the duration of life of everyone is being reduced. Every morning the sun comes and it sets in the evening. But do we ever realize this means one day less left in my life? You ever think that way?
Yes.
Do we? Yes, no? No. We don't think that way. We don't really think that time is passing so fast. It's like looking back at 2018, I'm sure you can see it was only yesterday when 2018 started, and today it's about to end, am I right? The time moves very fast, and time is of the essence. There was a learned devotee called Chanakya Pandit. Have you heard of Chanakya Pandit? He was very scholarly and very devoted. He was serving as the Prime Minister of a king, and he would live in complete simplicity, live in a cottage. And the king discovered how knowledgeable he was and how simply he was living. The king offered him a palace. He said, "No, if I take your favors, I'll have to be obliged to you." So Chanakya Pandit has made many important statements that the Vaishnava sages accept at par with Vyasadeva. So Chanakya Pandit says, "Isha kashalai kapina nabhaya sarna kotivi." A minute lost cannot be made up with the wealth of the entire world. Let's say you waste time, and then you say, "Can I get the time back?" Get a $10 million check. Can you ever get it back? You can't. So the great sages have said, don't waste time. Cultivate spiritual knowledge. Basically, there are two types of knowledge, material knowledge and spiritual knowledge. Material knowledge is also necessary, just like at the IIT and the NIT. You get very valuable knowledge in your respective fields. And that knowledge is also necessary. The material knowledge aims to facilitate our endeavor and our effort to get sense enjoyment. But then there is also spiritual knowledge. What does spiritual knowledge do? Spiritual knowledge guides us to build a strong character. Spiritual knowledge guides us to teach us how to control mind and the senses. And spiritual knowledge helps build our character. As all of you may know, we all know how morality, ethics, character is all on the decline. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes? No?
Yes.
I want some feedback from the students. It's on the decline. It's common knowledge. It's not something to be embarrassed about. We had a youth program at the Indira Gandhi Stadium about 2 months ago. There were 8,000 youth. And our chief guest was the HRD minister, Jayesh. Javed Praga. He had a speech with us. He gave a wonderful talk in which he said, I as the HRD minister acknowledge the weakness in our systems. So, everyone knows the material knowledge by itself is incomplete. People talk about building character. having ethical standards. That is only possible if we also cultivate spiritual education. In the 9th chapter of the Gita, Krishna says, Raja Vida Raja Guyo. This knowledge is the king of education. So spiritual knowledge tells you, who are you? How many people know who they are? Before coming to Krishna consciousness, do you know who you are?
No.
Did you? You know who you are now? Okay. So, we didn't have any knowledge about the soul. There are major universities around the world, and your university is also a prestigious university. But where do they teach? What happens after that? In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains the science of the soul. He says, for the soul, there is no birth or death. What is death, for example? Nothing but a change of dress. You change one, leave one body, take another body. The Bhagavad Gita says there is a soul in the body. The modern day atheists don't accept this. They say, this is just propaganda on the path of spiritualists to scare us down. But the Gita and even the Bible, the scriptures say, the soul is never birth nor death. Just like we discard our old clothes and wear new clothes, the soul leaves one body and takes on another body. And the type of body it gets is going to be based on how we perform, we act. In the Bible there's a nice statement, as you sow you shall reap. That is nothing but the law of karma, which is explained in the Vedic scriptures. And the Vedic scriptures were compiled by whom? Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is considered an incarnation of the Lord. He compiled the Vedic scriptures which give us knowledge about our real identity. The word Veda means knowledge. And as we said, you have material knowledge and you have spiritual knowledge. Both are necessary. If you have spiritual knowledge, you act in a proper manner. If you have spiritual knowledge, then you avoid what is detrimental and pursue what is conducive. The spiritual knowledge and material knowledge, both are necessary. Material knowledge helps you accomplish many areas, and spiritual knowledge helps you build a character. Spiritual knowledge teaches you how to control the mind and the senses, how to avoid depression. Depression, as you probably know, is also pretty common. And tension. Are people stressed out today? Yes.
Yes.
Is stress a problem? The doctors can say better than me.
Number one.
Number one, you go to any doctor, he tells you this is a disease. Doctor, what's the cause? Stress. Go to another doctor, stress. So stress basically means too much pressure. Too much pressure to achieve something. And usually we have unlimited wants. What advertising it does, it creates an appetite for desire. Buy this, buy this, buy this. You never has this car, so you should also have it. And then when you can't get it, then what happens? You get into depression. So, whereas if you had spirituality as a guide, then you would not get depressed. You would realize whatever is my quota, I'm going to get it. So, spiritual knowledge also is very necessary. These days we all talk about corruption and evil doing of politicians, etc. But the root cause of all this is what? Lack of spirituality. lack of understanding that we are all eternal and we are all responsible for everything we do. Bhagavad Gita gives us a manual, what to do, what not to do. And just like if you buy any expensive product, you get a manual with that, isn't it? What to do, what not to do. So similarly, the Vedas and the vast Vedic knowledge get summarized in the Bhagavad Gita. They are guiding us what to do and what not to do. If we take the guidelines, then it becomes easier. Our Prime Minister has a slogan, Swachh Bharat. Are you familiar with that? Swachh Bharat, clean India. There's so much garbage, clean it. We have a slogan, Swachh Hriday, clean the heart. If we don't clean the heart, you won't achieve any success anywhere else. If your heart is contaminated, then you won't be able to think straight. So, spiritual knowledge is of the essence. And scholars all over the world are recognizing that the present educational system suffers from many shortcomings. And the root cause is lack of sincerity. And the sincerity is lacking because we are devoid of spiritual knowledge. So therefore, Prahlad Maharaj was a great sage. He said, we should begin to cultivate spiritual knowledge from the age of 5. I was talking to a lady devotee teacher in a permanent school in Kanpur. I asked her what is the subject of teaching. She said education. They start teaching computer education in India from the age of 2.5. Can you believe it? In the West, in Russia, you can't go to school till you're 6. In India, you can start at 2.5. So, why do they start teaching computer education at such a young age? Because they feel the computer knowledge is very necessary and it has to be cultivated from a young age. Prahlad Maharaj said, we should also cultivate spiritual knowledge from a young age. But that we don't realize. And that's why we see the youth being influenced by so many evil habits, etc. All of you who have taken to Krishna consciousness, maybe to beginning, and some may be practicing for a long time, very fortunate and very lucky in that you made the right decision. Krishna consciousness doesn't mean you don't study, you don't work, you can't marry, no. Krishna consciousness merely means purifying your consciousness. That means, instead of being mean, selfish, you work for the pleasure of the Lord. Krishna says, with a mind dedicated to me, do your duty. So what does a Krishna conscious student do? He thinks, I have been given this intelligence by the Lord. Is that fact?
Yes.
Do we all acknowledge intelligence is coming from where? From where? It's all coming from the Lord. Lord is the source of everything material and spiritual. So our understanding is, since this intelligence is coming from the Lord, then we use it in service of the Lord. That's all. Then, whatever you do it in a mentality, I must please the Lord. He is the supreme enjoyer. So in the material world, we see there's danger at every step. Anything can happen at any time. Isn't that true? So the scriptures say, now you've got this human life, don't waste it. Use it for a happy purpose. So Krishna consciousness is something universal. It's not something sectarian. And we see the youth all over the world practicing Krishna consciousness, reading the Bhagavad Gita. Why? Because it answers all questions. So we should be inquiring, who am I? Where am I coming from? Where am I headed for? Who am I? It's explained in the second chapter, First Spirit Soul. We're actually coming from the Lord, and we're headed for a life which will be based on our actions or our karma. So, the scriptures explain, don't waste this valuable human life. Sometimes we think every birth is human. Every birth is not going to be human. That's going to be determined by our actions. So we should cultivate spiritual knowledge along with your spiritual knowledge. And spiritual knowledge will help build your character. And if you have a strong character, then it will help you to do what is right. And our experiences, those who take to Krishna consciousness, also get very good grades in their studies, because they don't have any bad habits. And because by cultivating spiritual knowledge, you're also getting spiritual strength to fight what is detrimental. So please take the Krishna consciousness seriously. You have everything to gain and nothing to lose. Hare Krishna. I thought we could leave time for questions, but whenever I come to the IIT, they have a lot of questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, they will ask many questions. I think you can raise your hand and then ask questions. Yeah.
Feel free to criticize us, challenge us, and accept. Yeah.
My question is, when we are not feeling good in chanting, we are feeling forceful to chant, in that condition, how can we revive?
When you don't feel like chanting when somebody is forcing you to chant, maybe a friend, maybe a relative. Am I right?
Maharaj, I'm not feeling to at that time.
You're not feeling to?
Chant. I'm not feeling to chant at that time.
I'm not doing by force.
Well, there's no such thing as force. Force would only be there if you're the IIT or NIT. So if NIT told you, if you don't chant, you're going to get fired. I'm sure they're not doing that. So whose force is from social pressure, from friends, relatives, then who else can force you?
It's like lose taste in chanting.
Why do we lose taste in chanting when we don't chant? But in any case, you have an inclination to chant also. If you didn't believe in chanting, you would not be here. I'm sure they didn't drag you to come here. Am I right? You came on your own. So you're being humble. You say, I don't have a taste, but you do have some taste. Otherwise you would not be here. And if there's force for something good, nothing to lose. When you were young, did your parents, your mother, force you to take medicine sometimes? So that was for a good cause. If you believe that, no, this chanting is nonsense, that's a different story. But we all know chanting, consciously or unconsciously, is beneficial. Okay? So please chant, okay? Okay, any more questions? Yes?
Hare Krishna, thank you for your class. Maharaj, I have a question. You spoke about spiritual life, spiritual knowledge and material knowledge. So, why it is, we know that spiritual life is very good for oneself, and material, the way people live particularly people, that's painful, that's not good for oneself. Then why is it again and again to do spiritual things, it takes a lot of pain and effort, it takes a lot of effort, and it looks very unnatural, while material, it doesn't take effort and it looks natural. We know it is other way around, but why it is so, and how we can fight this battle?
Okay. It's not that everybody thinks spirituality requires force. Just like many of you at one time may have had a different concept of life. Now that you obtain higher knowledge, your mentality has changed. Otherwise, none of you would be here. You're not getting any extra grades in NIT or IIT for coming here. So, we are used to a certain lifestyle, which is based on ignorance. There's one prayer we say, Om Gyanti Niranjandasya Niranjandas. I was born in ignorance. Most of us are born in ignorance, they live in ignorance, and they die in ignorance. But some are very fortunate. Though they are born in ignorance, but they meet a saintly person, and that saintly person guides them, and then they discover the real path you follow. Just like all of you, you are enrolled in the NIT, IIT, but you didn't have any knowledge what spirituality when you joined. But then you met a saintly person, someone who gave you the philosophy. You tried it, and you felt that was satisfying, and you pursued it. Am I right? So, just like Krishna explains, there are 3 types of happiness in the 18th chapter. Happiness in goodness, happiness in passion, happiness in ignorance. What is happiness in goodness? Bitter in the beginning, sweet in the end, in which wakes you up to self-realization. And happiness and passion is sweet in the beginning, bitter in the end, and which is derived of contact on the senses with sense object. So, to move up to goodness, in the beginning it is bitter. You have to chant, that means you're giving time to chant, and something else you have to stop. You only have 24 hours in a day. It's not that if you become a devotee, the day gets extended to 26 hours. In the beginning it's bitter, but then as you chant, you discover, oh, this is something very good. And it becomes sweet. Whereas happiness and passion, sweet in the beginning, as you said, but then it becomes bitter. You look at most diseases that people have, it's all the result of bad habits. Okay, any more? Yes? I knew you all would have a lot of questions. Go on.
My question is sometimes I feel attracted towards material knowledge, sometimes I feel attracted towards spiritual knowledge. So how to balance both the knowledge?
Material knowledge means your studies. Are you at the IIT or NIT?
NIT.
So, those of you who are students, we don't say don't study. Study. We do MTech, PhD, double PhD, triple PhD, no problem. But cultivate spiritual knowledge side by side. Spiritual knowledge will help you build a strong character. It will save you from bad habits. Bad habits are destructive of the body. Forget the money it counts. So if you can avoid something bad, why not do it? If we have spirituality as a guide, then you are prevented from bad habits. Yeah? Yes, more, yes.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Sir, while chanting for long, it is a good method, and if we are devoted, we are kept in the ocean of devotion, we can realize the higher consciousness levels that who am I with a clarity. Sir, is there any method by which we can influence others, we can increase others' etheric content and make them sensible more to let them realize that who are they?
If I understand your question correctly, you say chanting has value, but is there a method to make others chant also? Is that your question?
I'm asking a method that can influence faster and that we can use for others to make them realize that that what experience is there.
Just give me one line. What's your question?
Like self-realization. If one experiences, but it is very difficult to share it with others so that they can also realize.
Birds of the same feather flock together. The famous English saying. So, if you are pursuing spiritual life, stay in association of other spiritualists. And others, preach to them, and I'm sure when you preach to them, somebody will be interested. If nobody was interested, then none of you would have been here. All right? All of you are here, and you're pursuing material studies, but you're here because you also got a taste for spiritual life. Am I right? So, next.
Maharaj, whatever service, devotional service we do, which one of them is the most important? That much we do.
Okay, give him the mic. It's an important question. If some of you want to ask questions in Hindi, that is okay.
Whatever devotional service practice we do, devotional service we do in a day. So which one of them is the most important that we must do?
If you want spiritual life, the most important service is chanting the holy name. Chanting the holy name builds a foundation for you. If in a building the foundation is strong, the building remains strong, am I right? But if you don't chant, then your foundation is very weak. So chanting and hearing, that will gradually cleanse the heart. And as your heart gets cleansed, you discover a higher taste. There's high taste and low taste. The higher taste is obtained by practicing spiritual life. You chant regularly, you're doing the right thing.
Sometimes I miss.
Huh?
Sometimes I miss.
At least you've started chanting. So slowly, you'll catch up. Keep chanting. Okay.
How to improve one's chanting?
In chanting, quality is important also. The Lord has invested all His energies in the holy name. So it is best if you can chant and hear. Chant, and if you chant and hear, then that will help have more effect on yourself. Chanting is beneficial in any situation, but it's more beneficial if chanted attentively. Okay, questions?
Hare Krishna, sir. Sir, what happened to the atheist people who don't believe in chanting? They don't know how to chant and who don't believe in this. Will they be successful in life or not?
Krishna says in the Gita, one who doesn't accept spirituality is simply living in vain. So, these people, they may not chant, but hopefully they are pursuing some spiritual path. But if a person, let's say he's an atheist, he says, I don't believe in God at all, and he engages in sinful activities, then he'll have to pay the repercussion. Tit for tat. In Hindi they say naila pe tela. In English they say an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. So, if we engage in detrimental activities, activities against the laws of God, then you face punishment also. Okay, more?
Maharaj, you have spoken about the soul and
You have spoken about the soul and multiple lives. Is there any logical explanation or reason for this?
Or the soul.
multiple lives.
Soul and multiple lives.
Reincarnations.
Coming to that. First of all, the presence of the soul is recognized by consciousness. You have a dead body here and a living body here. If you say something, the living person will reply. The dead person won't reply, isn't it? Why he doesn't reply? The soul has gone away. Reincarnation means that based on our action, we obtain another body. And a lot of people today, even in the Western world, believe in this. The Vedas emphasize this. In the Bible there is a statement, what shall I do if thou gainest the whole world but suffer the loss of your eternal soul? Jesus Christ says, if you gain the whole world, if you lose your eternal soul, what did you achieve? So, the soul in everyone's body, and the soul moves from one body to another. It is based on our action. The proof is scriptural knowledge. And the other proof is that we just give you an example. The dead body doesn't respond. Why? Because there's no soul. So reincarnation is an accepted fact, and we have some books on this topic also. Any more questions? Yes.
Maharaj, following spiritual life, we get many side benefits like satisfaction, happiness.
Nice prasad. Isn't it? That's one of the side effects.
But sometimes we get satisfied in that only. So how to remain fixed up that we have to achieve love of God?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat your question?
Following spiritual path, we get many side benefits like satisfaction, happiness, wealth, fame, etc. But how to remain always fixed up that we have to achieve Krishna Prem or love of God?
You keep chanting regularly, keep reading regularly, and keep associating with saintly people. If you do these three, you will never lose your vision. And that's practical. You may have experienced when you chant and read, your consciousness is high all day. Isn't it? And sometimes when you don't chant, then your consciousness goes low. Am I right? In Krishna consciousness, everything can be practiced and observed. Prabhupada used to say, don't take anything blindly. We don't take blindly, we don't advocate blindness. Take it with logical understanding. Okay, a few more questions and then we'll have our guest speaker speak a bit. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Maharaj, how one can realize that he is doing improvement in Krishna consciousness after taking Krishna consciousness for one or 2 years?
You want to know, how do you know if you are advancing? You examine yourself. Am I getting a taste for chanting? Do I feel like chanting? Do I feel like reading? Do I like being with devotees? See these symptoms. And if you've been in devotee association for 2 or 3 years, it means you are getting a taste. Otherwise, why would you be with them? Alright? There's no agency in the world that says, if you're not Krishna conscious, we're going to imprison you. But you're coming on your own because it's giving you some benefit. Krishna consciousness is beneficial from all sides. I had somebody tell me, since I became Krishna conscious, my expenses have gone down by half. I said, how? I knew the answer. I said, how? He said, now I only go to office, home to office, office to temple, and back home. Previously I would go to clubs, that, waste so much money. Even from an economic standpoint, Krishna consciousness is good. You save money. Somebody said, oh, why did you tell me this first? You get saved from bad habits. Okay, any more?
Sir?
Yes.
Hare Krishna, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, who are the persons that you loved and hated most?
I'm sorry. Can you speak louder?
Sir, who are the persons that you loved and hated most and why?
So what's the question?
Who is the person you loved and hated most?
And why?
I don't hate anyone, so I cannot.
Whatever now, sir.
And what was the other part?
Love.
What?
Who is the person you love the most and most?
We love everyone, the entire humanity. The entire humanity is created by God. So we want to serve everyone. And hate, we don't hate anyone. We don't want to hate the sinner. We don't even hate the one who criticizes us. Okay? Okay. Yes, sir.
As you told that we are born in the ocean of, we are born by ignorance, we have in birth innate, we are born in ignorance. And I think that we lead to the Krishna consciousness by association. So, because association keeps a quite important place in devotion to Krishna. I'm practicing it. I think. What do you think?
You're on the right path. You have made the right decision.
Actually, I am surrounded by good people. I am practicing Krishna consciousness honestly. Suppose I went to a group of people who are full of evil things. And
Don't go there. Because if you go there, they'll try to influence you.
can my character not mold them, their characters into myself? No.
Yes, by preaching you can. But you should be sure you can preach and not be preached by them. You know?
How should I mold my character so that I can't be pleased by their motives, and in other terms, I will praise them with my own motives.
If you are determined you can preach to them, then preach. But if you feel, 50-50, then don't do it. Okay, any more questions?
One last question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Sir, how much our freedom fighters during the 19th and 20th century were successful, who were continuously struggled for the freedom of India?
What's the question? So,
Sir, how much our freedom fighters would be successful in the development of their eternal? Means how much they would be loving to Krishna or to the God?
I don't know. I know that Mahatma Gandhi loved the Bhagavad Gita. Nehru, as we know, wasn't so religious. Mahatma Gandhi used to advocate the Gita. And Prabhupada told him, "You're such a famous man, preach the Gita everywhere." He never did that.
So, just one question I want to ask that we all suffer some time or other in our lives. So, it is the accounts of our previous lives or the things action in this life?
Good question. When you're born in this world, you're born with your quota of happiness and distress. And this quota is determined by your actions of previous life. So the distress you experience in this life is a combination of the two. Your history and your current activities. Both. Everything is noticed and recorded.